Another day goes by and we still don't know what's happening with Alex Wood and Alex Cobb, two pitchers the Giants seemed to be on the verge of signing, and several days now, a couple days have gone by and we haven't heard anything yet about a deal being finalized. So we're going to speculate about what's going on. We're also going to talk about if those guys were to sign at their assumed contracts, where that would leave the Giants and what they would be able to do from that point. So we'll get to that and so much more on today's Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms now, including YouTube as well. And coming up on today's show, as I said, I want to talk about what might be going on with Alex Wood and Alex Cobb. We heard that the Giants were close to signing these two. And in fact, with Alex Wood, we had multiple reporters saying that the Giants were finalizing a deal. And this was, I believe, not yesterday, but the day before, in the earlier part of the day. So what could be going on? And then also, another starting pitcher flew off the board last night, Steven Matz signing with the Cardinals. And so we'll talk about how it was another deal above market value, potentially, based on predictions at least, and why, or just what that means, and why I think that the Giants signing DeSclafani for the terms that they did, and potentially signing Wood and Cobb at what we expect the terms to be, why I just love the position that would put the Giants in. So anyway, so much to get to. Let's just be a little bit organized, though, with it. I want to give a shout out to SF Stats Guy on YouTube, who threw this out in the comments yesterday as a suggestion as to what's going on with Wood and Cobb. They said, I wonder if some deals are not being announced because of trying to open up spots on the 40-man roster, perhaps trying to trade guys to free up spots. So I actually think that that's a really solid guess. And it immediately reminded me of what happened with Wilmer Flores a couple of off seasons ago. We heard reports that the Giants had signed Flores, or they had an agreement with Wilmer Flores. And then days and potentially even weeks, I don't remember exactly how long, went by before the team actually made an official announcement. And it had everything to do, I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but basically the reason that they would do it in this case is they have a full 40-man roster. And so in order to sign any one player, let alone two, they would have to make corresponding 40-man roster moves, like designating someone for assignment. And so maybe the Giants are trying to work out a trade for someone on their 40-man roster, or consolidating even a little bit, trading a couple guys on the 40-man for one guy, and then you've cleared a spot that way. Something to do with that. I think that that's a solid guess because, I don't know, I mean, to hear that they're finalizing a deal and then not to hear anything at all, it is a little bit odd. Of course, it could be that something just fell through, but I would lean more towards trusting those reporters who put that out. It was a couple of legitimate reporters saying that they were in the final stages and that it was being finalized. That to me basically is a done deal. Of course, in some cases those deals do fall through, but with the Giants, we haven't really seen that in a long time, and certainly under this front office, I haven't seen that happen. I can't remember of that ever happening with them. So I would expect those deals to ultimately get done at some point. But yeah, I mean, that's a possible explanation. I don't know about Alex Cobb. That was a little bit less uh, final sounding by the reports. It was more like they're in deep discussions with Alex Cobb as opposed to they're finishing a deal. But anyway, we shall see. But those guys are expected to get contracts that to me are going to end up looking pretty reasonable, especially when we compare what those are expected to be to some of the deals players have gotten so far. Steven Matz came off the board yesterday, signing for 4 years and $44 million. To me, just a really solid deal for the player. The predicted contracts by MLB Trade Rumors, ESPN, and Fangraphs, nobody had him going above 3 years. Two sources had 3 years, one source had 2 years. And the average annual value, if that makes any sense, was 11.8 million. So he did come in at roughly that amount, actually a little below it at 11 million, but over 4 years, so 44 million guaranteed. I don't really love that deal from the team's perspective, and I think the Giants getting Anthony DeSclafani for 3 years, 36 million is a better deal. And I mean, look at what DeSclafani was able to do in 2021, and then he gets a lesser deal than Steven Matz. Yes, it's 1 million more per season, but overall, I mean, 3 years, just long-term deals for pitchers. I wouldn't be giving out 4 years to Steven Matz personally. So coming up next, I want to talk about those points I was just making a second ago about Alex Wood and Alex Cobb and what those likely deals would be. And in fact, we even had some numbers thrown out by reporters. I think it was Jeff Passan who suggested what the Giants' contract with Wood was going to be. And I want to talk about what position that would leave the Giants in if they could land Wood, they could land Cobb in addition to DeSclafani, and how they would be in a good position relative to this hot starting pitcher market. So that and so much more is coming up next. But first, I love Thanksgiving. It's tomorrow. All the good food and treats and plenty of them, but maybe you want a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar. It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. And that's really important to me. And my favorite is the raspberry Built Bar, and it can replace that raspberry pie on Thanksgiving. Maybe have one slice of pie, and instead of having that second, you can go for a Built Bar. So right now, go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you can get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right, as promised, I want to talk about these predicted contracts for Alex Wood and Alex Cobb and the exact position that would leave the Giants in. Now, of course, we don't know what those actual contracts will be, but like I said, with Alex Wood, we did have a legit reporter in Jeff Passan saying basically what the terms would be, and it falls right in line with what I expected based on my feelings about Wood and what he would get, and also these other sources, ESPN, MLB Trade Rumors, and Fangraphs, they feel similarly, evidently, so we'll look at that in a second. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. So with the addition of Anthony DeSclafani, the Giants' payroll sits at about $104 million. That is assuming that they're not paying the $3 million buyout to Posey. At least we're not counting that in our payroll calculations. But that's also assuming they tender contracts to all of their arbitration eligible players, which at this point I think they probably will, with maybe the one exception being John Brebia, which would save them roughly $1 million. So it's not really a deal breaker. It doesn't really change things much. But with Alex Dickerson, being DFA'd. I thought he was a non-tender, not just candidate, but that he would be non-tendered. So anyway, I think it's safe to assume that pretty much everybody who's arbitration eligible will be back, and that puts the Giants at roughly $104 million. But Alex Wood, what Jeff Passan said he was likely to get from the Giants and that they were finalizing this deal, he said it was for 2 years at about $10 million per season. I think actually his exact words were for more than $10 million per season. Obviously that could mean anything, but I would expect it to be maybe 11, maybe 10 and a half. And that's actually right in line with what I expected Wood to get anyway. In fact, the predicted contract for Wood based on MLB Trade Rumors, ESPN, and Fangraphs was 2 or 3 years at $10.5 million per year. So getting him for 2 years is more team friendly than getting him for 3, especially with a pitcher who has injury risk associated with him. And Alex Cobb also has injury risk, and that injury risk is priced into these contracts. Like if Alex Wood and Alex Cobb were the pinnacles of health, they would be getting more than these predicted contracts. But these sources are factoring in their shaky health histories. So the predicted contract for Cobb is 2 years at about $8 million per season. So if you bring in Wood and Cobb at a combined 18 million-ish, maybe 19 million per season, then you add that to the Giants' current payroll, and they're sitting still at about $125 million. And they would have brought in 3 starting pitchers. Yes, they're not like super upper echelon pitchers. In fact, this is more of a mid-tier play for the Giants on all 3 of these guys, which of course only one has actually been signed right now. So I could be saying something that ends up not transpiring at all. But let's just say they sign these 3 guys, DeSclafani, Wood, and Cobb. That would put them at, like I said, 120 to 125 million with 4 strong starting pitchers in Webb, DeSclafani, Wood, and Cobb. And so they would have just so much money to go just to even get to their 2021 payroll, which was about 160 million. So they would have almost $40 million just to get there. And so they would be in such a good position to just kind of wait out the rest of the market and pounce when they see just the right opportunity for them. It would take them out of this position of quasi-desperation where they had so many spots to fill in that starting rotation. If they're just sitting on 4 solid starters, there's not this urgency to sign starters, and especially when the starting pitcher market is so hot. That's kind of the point I want to make, is that these guys are flying off the board at contracts above the predictions. And I mean, Justin Verlander getting that second year with a player option at $25 million for 2 years, $25 million per year. First year guaranteed, second year guaranteed as a player option for a guy who's going to be 40 in that second year, and he's coming off Tommy John surgery. We had Steven Matz getting that extra year at 4 years, $44 million. We had Noah Syndergaard doing really well for himself at $21 million. We've had Eduardo Rodriguez. I thought Rodriguez got a solid deal at 5 years, $77 million. Solid for the player and the team. And yeah, that's pretty much all the guys right now, but it just has been quite hot. And so the Giants kind of diving into that middle class of starting pitchers, I just think, like in hindsight, now that I think about it, it's kind of a genius move. Although, again, they haven't actually finalized deals with 2 of these 3 guys. But they would have signed this middle class at actual market value deals, and then they would still be in just such a good position with so much money to spend. And they could sign one of the top tier guys like Kevin Gausman, Max Scherzer, a lot of people like Marcus Stroman. I have my reasons for preferring Scherzer and Gausman and potentially Robbie Ray, even though he's got the qualifying offer associated with him. But there's at least 4 guys who could be considered top tier guys, and the Giants could just kind of wait them out and see who's the right fit at the right cost on the right terms. And if none of them are, they could pivot to the position player side where there's a lot of good position players. In the infield, there's superstars. You've got Correa, Seager, Marcus Semien. In the outfield, you've got Castellanos, Starling Marte, and the Giants could basically just take their pick over as to who they want to bring in, and they would have so many different options and potentially the right deal for them, and potentially multiple deals for really, really good players could potentially fall into place for them. So I just love the position it would put them in, and hopefully these deals get finalized. But the DeSclafani one stands out as a very reasonable deal among these other starting pitchers who are signing for typically from anywhere between 10 to 25% above expected years average annual value and total guaranteed money. For DeSclafani, the average annual value he got was right in line with the predicted average annual value he was going to get. And so that's one of the few guys so far among all of these top starting pitchers who came in at like a market value deal. And so I like that for the Giants. I'm not surprised because they've been really good at getting guys for market value deal or even below market value deals. And for the 1,000th time, the reason that's important is because there is some kind of limit on what the ownership is willing to spend. The Giants are in a better position than almost any team in this regard, so we should be thankful instead of critical. I think they're willing to go $200 million plus for the right players, and yeah, I just think that they are in a really, really good position in a number of different ways. So coming up next, we're going to talk about something that changed with the collective bargaining agreement set to expire. The non-tender deadline, or the tender deadline, was moved. And so we're going to talk about that and a couple of other key issues as well. It's Thanksgiving, and we all know what that means. Football, and nothing goes better with football than turkey and betting. BetOnline has you covered all holiday season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this Thanksgiving. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus with promo code LOCKEDON. And it's not just football. BetOnline has pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, and even your favorite Vegas casino games. So don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, we are stuffed with deals this Thanksgiving. All right, here we go. We're going to cover some odds and ends here. And tomorrow, just to let you know, we are not planning to have an episode out due to the holiday, but we will be back on Friday. I may make an exception to that if something major goes down, but just a heads up, we may not have an episode out tomorrow as we enjoy the holiday. But I did just want to point out something from Robert Murray initially reporting, and then multiple reporters, Ken Rosenthal among them, confirming that the tender deadline has been moved up to November 30th at 5 o'clock Pacific time. It was previously scheduled for December 1st, says Murray, although what I had seen was that it was December 2nd, which got me very confused because the collective bargaining agreement is set to expire at midnight Eastern time on December 1st. And so I'm sure you've heard a lot about a potential lockout in the sport. I fully expect we are heading towards a lockout starting on December 2nd. And that's probably going to put a freeze on transactions, which is going to be very disappointing as a fan because all we're going to have to cover, which is going to be fascinating in its own right, and we will be there all along the way talking about these negotiations, which may reshape the entire fabric of the sport in a lot of ways. But it's just unfortunate that there's probably going to be a freeze on transactions, and what's going to end up happening potentially is that there's a lockout until, who knows, February, even early March. And I mean, it could go longer, right? That's the thing, is it could potentially cause us to miss games. And we all hope that's not the case, but it is a possibility. But anyway, there would be a freeze on transactions, and then when that gets unfrozen, imagine the frenzy if spring training is set to start like immediately when the freeze comes off, and then there's going to be all these players out there. So that could potentially drive a lot of activity in the next week and a half or so until that expires, because there's going to be players who just want to get a deal done before this potential lockout. And there's also going to be teams that want to settle some spots of need before a potential lockout. But anyway, the tender deadline is when arbitration eligible players and pre-arbitration eligible players are either tendered contracts for the upcoming year or they are non-tendered, which makes them a free agent. Now, the Giants have about, it looks like 7 players who are arbitration eligible. They did have 8. Alex Dickerson was among them, but he was designated for assignment to make room for Anthony DeSclafani. But their arbitration eligible players are Mike Yastrzemski, Darren Ruff, Kurt Casale, Austin Slater, Harleen Garcia, Dominic Leone, and John Brebia. Now, they have basically predicted contracts based on, well, not based on, but let's just keep it simple. MLB Trade Rumors every year has an algorithm that they use that is pretty good at predicting what these players would make if they were to go to arbitration. And so we can use these averages, these predictions, to look at, what is the estimate for what these players are going to make next year. And at their predicted salaries, for example, Mike Yastrzemski at $3.1 million, Darren Ruff $2.6 million, Kurt Casale $2 million, Austin Slater $2 million, Harleen Garcia $1.8, Dominic Leone $1.5, and Brebia $1 million. All of these guys, with maybe the exception of John Brebia, some of you are going to be saying it's no question about Brebia, but he still, has that club control and a minor league option, and so he could be valuable. $1 million. It's hard to get a guy with any kind of upside for just $1 million, and Brebia does have some. He was good before the Tommy John surgery. I know he wasn't good in 2020, but anyway, it's small potatoes either way, right? $1 million. It doesn't really make a difference to the payroll for the Giants. So it's just a matter, do they believe in him or not? And yeah, so I expect them to tender contracts to all of these players, and we know that this is going to happen before the CBA expires, before a potential lockout, because otherwise we may have been in limbo for a long time with these guys. And the thing is, it's not just the Giants, right? It's the whole league has all of these players who are arbitration eligible. And what this means for the Giants in a bigger sense is there's going to be a lot of players who get non-tendered, which makes them free agents. And it just adds a whole new set of players, a large number of players to the free agent pool. And that's going to dilute, market values a little bit because there's more supply, but also it's just new players, right? There may be some guys who are of interest to the Giants. So it's just something to look out for, and it's good to know that it's going to happen before the collective bargaining agreement expires. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Really hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Please check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick. And if you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, that subscribe button as well, and please leave a comment below and join in the conversation. Again, really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And until then, we'll see you next time.